Changed everything. All right. Streaming. Let's record. All right. Where's that document?
You should know it by heart by now.
I have the hybrid language modified by our executive
Oh, if you want to read that, Rachel, for me, that's great.
Sure, okay. So let's get started. Welcome to the March 13th, spooky Friday the 13th Budget Task Force meeting of the year. My name is Rachel Lee. I'm the second vice chair of Manhattan Community Board 4 and the chair of the Budget Task Force for this year. We are conducting this meeting virtually because of the emergency order that is still in place. So this meeting will be completely virtual as allowed by the open meeting law and the MCB4 hybrid meeting policy. Governor Hochul declared a state of weather emergency for New York County, which Community Board 4 is in through March 19th, 2027. So the board hereby declares, pursuant to the New York State Public Officers Law, that circumstances necessitating the governor's declaration of emergency allows our board to conduct its meeting remotely pursuant to the resolution and procedures, and it has been adopted under the authority granted by the New York State Public Officers Law to govern remote participation in the meeting. This meeting is open to the public, and as always, board members are expected to join with their cameras on, and a recording and transcript of the meeting will be available online on the MCB4 website and YouTube page. Should we quickly go around and say hi? I know it's a Zoom format and our name is on the screen, but can we just quickly go on the screen and say name? And if you're a co-chair of a committee, you can say that as well.
Katie Stokes.
Josephine Ishman, I co-chair ACES.
Okay, Christine Berthet, co-chair transportation. Yeah, Kevin
Collins.
Ella Kim. Sorry, I don't see this board, but hello.
Wonderful. And we have a couple of other task force members joining momentarily. So as you probably saw on our agenda today, we have one primary goal. We are here to discuss and produce comments to the mayor's preliminary budget of 2027 and the agency responses to our statement of district needs for fiscal year 2027. Hi, Dolores. Thanks for joining, Dolores. So in terms of the timeline, Jesse, correct me if I had this right, but we have received an extension until March 25th. So our goal is to present our letter that comes at the end of this meeting to the executive committee, which is on Monday, March 23rd. Is that right? Great. So,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So any questions on that so far? Timing, our goal today. Wonderful. Awesome. So in terms of process here, just to keep us efficient and on the same page, I thought it would be helpful if I just quickly helped refresh ourselves on the latest district needs. I know a lot of you worked on it and it's been a minute. At least the top 3 issues that we listed, because that would serve as a framework for our comments in reviewing the materials, right? And then I will quickly provide an overview of the preliminary budget for this year for those who didn't have a chance to look at it prior to the meeting. And then we can look at the agency responses together and start brainstorming kind of our responses of what we need to include in the letter. Does that sound like a good plan? Okay, so at the risk of crashing my Zoom, I'm going to try and share my screen. Just 1 second. Okay. Let me know when something pops up on everyone's screen, okay?
So far, it says you're screen sharing, but we don't see anything else.
Okay. It's gonna come. All right. How about now?
Not yet.
It's Friday. Our technology is also feeling the Friday. So just give it a second. It says it's sharing
You're
on
in.
my
Got it
Yep.
now.
Yay. Okay. So this is, as you probably can tell, our latest statement of community district needs from MCB4. And the page that I wanted to hop into was the top 3 issues, right? So within the top 3 issues, which are obviously crime and public safety, affordable housing, and other matters, I highlighted some of the points because they are kind of an amalgam of, various issues, right? So I highlighted some of the points that I think would be relevant to what we're about to see in the preliminary budget and the agency responses, right? So within crime and public safety, we asked for more park enforcement officers, more traffic enforcement, more resources for NYPD, and additional resources for the DA's office and courts like Midtown Community Justice Center. Within affordable housing, we highlighted the need for enforcement on illegal demolitions, landlord harassments, new affordable housing in terms of a broad range of income levels and a number of different bedroom units. And also we mentioned the point about protecting NYCHA residents in light of kind of recent developments there. In the other section, we mentioned a couple of different things, but really highlighting the various projects in our district, right? So the Port Authority, the Manhattan Cruise Ship Terminal, and we asked that the priorities include expediting the infrastructure for the Manhattan Cruise Ship Terminal, and then completing some of the infrastructure for transportation, pedestrian, cycling to alleviate the congestion issue. And also we asked for increased enforcement against illegal trash dumping. So these are the things that we had last highlighted in our last statement of district needs. Any questions on this or comments on this so far? Ella.
I was just taking a look at our latest crime stats, and if I understand that crime and public safety, I think it really has, we need to sort of get a little bit more specific around it, because our crime numbers have gone down significantly, in terms of major crimes. But the things that have gone up is petty theft, retail petty theft has gone up, and misdemeanor, let me look this up.
Ella, may I ask, are you looking at a specific precinct? Because, we have 4 precincts.
Yeah, I am looking at, precinct 10 and precinct 18.
Yeah.
Yep.
Midtown North and the 10.
Yeah. Basically, robberies down 35%, felony assaults down 43%, and burglaries down 43% in precinct 10, and then similar trends in 18, precinct 18 as well. So I guess these are significant decreases. So I think I still think that this is obviously what's in our survey, and this is what people think. It's really a perception issue piece, and really crimes are happening more in the misdemeanor. And do we feel our asks around foot patrol is helping? Actually, and as related to this, it looks like collisions were up 17%. It went from 78 collisions to 91. So in terms of traffic enforcement, I think that's relevant here. But I just wanted to open that up, because I would hate for to say number one priority for us from our budget is crime, yet, they'll look at our numbers and say, these numbers are so significantly down. What are these guys talking about?
Okay. Josephine?
Just a question on the affordable housing. Was there any discussion last time on stabilizing rents
Sorry,
or?
Josephine, can we just stick with what Ella brought up though?
Oh, okay. No, go ahead. Then I'll wait.
Yeah, any response to what Ella shared? Kevin, was that any?
Yeah, so
Oh.
just letting you know from a budget standpoint, most of the precincts have folks that come to the precinct councils and are asking for more presence of the police. And us asking for that in the budget, we may not get it, but it does reflect what the community is looking for, regardless of whether or not we see those numbers being down. The numbers are down across the major categories. However, as you noted, a lot of the other categories where they are up are the ones that most of us that are in the residential areas feel the most. We are recognizing package thefts, car thefts, all these things that as we walk around our streets, we feel this and it creates a sense, a lack of safety. So by requesting, as per the survey results, that we have more resources going into foot patrol, it makes us feel safer, as well as it continues to keep those petty crimes lower, which in turn can also help in maintaining the trend that we've been seeing of the major crimes going down.
Kevin, was your comment related to this topic as well?
It is,
Okay.
and I'll keep it short. I concur with what Dolores said. She does a very good job heading up the Midtown North Council. I go to those monthly meetings, and at every monthly meeting, there's a request for increased foot patrol. In reading through the survey results, that came to the forefront, not just in the raw data, because I printed out the chart that shows the statistical results, but reading through the actual written responses from folks, the request for foot patrol comes to the forefront. And in talking to people in the community, it's still at the forefront of folks' mind, even today, as well as last year's results. So I would suggest that we put forth or continue to advocate for increased foot patrol. Thank you.
Roberta?
I would just echo everything Kevin and Dolores says. I think that this has been just something where there's unequivocal support from the community. What I will say though is that, you know, this is a place where I'm sort of not certain how effective our advocacy has been, not because we're not doing a good job of articulating what the problem is. I think we are, and making the request very clear. I think we're doing that. But if there is another way to spin or to couch the data to help make the request and to ultimately get those patrols increased, I think that would be helpful, though I do not suggest that I know precisely how to thread that needle.
All right, Katie, and then we'll go to Ella. I think you might have a response after that, and then we'll go to Josephine for affordable housing.
We all know that foot patrol has actually been our #1 request in the last couple of years. And then we said it a little bit differently this year. And I do think that we should be mindful of everything that's been mentioned here. I think Ella is exactly right that, we shouldn't, we should acknowledge that the crimes are down, but because of the crimes that continue to exist, those are the ones that would actually be more affected or more impacted by the presence of foot patrols, right? So I think we sort of have to thread the needle and not and look like we know what we're talking about, right? That we acknowledge that certain crimes are down, but that that the biggest request of our community is to have police officers doing foot patrols more often. We've been asking for this for years, and we think it's really going to help with some of the package thefts and some of the quality of life crimes that are happening, to have more police presence. So anyway, I think we just have to put things into context, and then I think that will help make our advocacy just much stronger.
Yeah, and I think we're typically good about footnoting and providing data points where they are available. So yeah. Ella, did you have a follow-up
Well,
to this?
yeah,
Or,
just to
and then we'll
quickly
move on to
echo
the-
that is that I think if we could just include the fact that, because we do say that major crimes are down, but what has been up is misdemeanor assaults by 48% and retail theft by 22%. And those are significant increases. And if we can just say that's why we want the, foot patrol.
All right, let's move on. So Josephine?
Well, yeah, I just also wanted to add on though about
Sure,
the foot patrols, because I don't think that the 13th precinct was mentioned, but that's also an ask here. And
Well,
just want to add that in, that residents are looking for that extra support in this precinct as well.
Mhm.
Are we moving on now
Yeah,
to
and then you had
affordability?
yep. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, right. So I just wondered to know if there was any discussion about stabilizing rents in last year's talk about affordability. I just don't see it in this paragraph anywhere. And what was the discussion? If anyone thought that that was an issue?
Sorry, Josephine, could I ask you to clarify when you're saying stabilizing rents, are you talking about
No,
rent
sorry, go ahead.
in particular, like affordable housing, overall market rents? Like what, if you want to expand upon what you mean by that?
What I really mean is just reducing the rent increases.
Just really quickly, Jesse, Leslie is asking to be brought over. I didn't know she was in the attendees section. So can you help bring her over, please? All right, we can continue our discussion. Hi, Leslie.
Or-
Thank you for joining.
Leslie, I was just asking about the affordability section, and if there was a discussion last time on stabilizing rent increases.
So Roberta or any of the other members, do you remember discussion on that point?
I don't think we discussed that, Roberta, right? Because and again, we were taking our discussion points from letters, right, that had come out from different committees during the year. And I don't think that our board had ever had a letter about rent freezes or minimizing rent increases specifically. But somebody else, correct me if I'm wrong.
I think that is right. And I would also say, because I definitely, this is unquestionably an issue that people are bringing up, that rents are rising in excess of increase in incomes, that we would have to figure out like a financial ask, like a budget ask for this. And we have typically focused our budget asks on supply, whether that be new construction or preservation financing, which in theory help stabilize rents a little bit, but if we're honest about the issue, we have just such an excess of demand that it would be hard to absorb that in our district alone.
Yeah, I see that we recognized it in terms of kind of, there are state laws to try and preserve and protect existing rent stabilized stock, right, as part of our statement last year. But yeah, Josephine, did you have, maybe we can go to this year's preliminary budget and see how, if there might be an opportunity to kind of examine or like kind of focus on that a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, great, awesome. So is that okay? Should we move on to the preliminary budget and see how our district needs can translate over to our request? So here, switching screens, if everyone can see the budget summary for this year. Okay, great. So basically, this is a 40-page PowerPoint slide. The first half sets the background, right? The first 10 slides talks about how this new administration inherited a budget gap, right? So meaning unbudgeted or under budgeted for meeting the needs, right? So there is a budget gap based on the prior administration. They note that it was the largest since the Great Recession in 2009. And they go on to talking about all the steps they have taken, or some of the steps that have been taken to update the revenue projections to try and close the gap, right? So that's page 11. So here are steps we've taken to update the projections and tackle the gap, right? So they go into how now, these are kind of like personal corporate sales tax projections, how each agency will now have a chief savings officer for the first time in New York City history, hiring auditors at the Department of Finance to generate more money. And then Governor Hochul also made a 2-year commitment of $1.5 billion. So these are just kind of talking about here's what we're doing to close that gap, right? And then they say, here are the 2 paths forward, but basically it's, goal is to increase the personal income taxes of those that are making the highest income, and the last resort being raising property taxes and stuff like that. So that's kind of them setting the stage for this year's budget. Diving into this year's preliminary budget. So that's page 21 and 27, actually. So see, it's like a lot of context up until, a lot of them are helpful. So here's the preliminary budget for the fiscal year 2027. So we have a budget of 127 billion. And this is the breakdown by agency. I'll leave it here so you can kind of glance over it, but you can see that DOE gets 40%, social services 26%, and so on. They're saying that 96% of this is supposed to cover the unfunded needs, right? And some unique items this year is there was actions taken in response to the snowstorm, addressing the weather impact, several $1 million, right, spent there. And our budget for that, and shelter and care for homeless New Yorkers is also getting a lot of highlight here. So this is adding new mobile units, a new site to the Bridge to Home program, compassionate outreach, increased efforts, things like that. And then the last segment that they highlight is protecting New Yorkers, and this has to do with, more lawyers to protect our rights, access to nutritious food, and I believe these are all in response to kind of the developments that we've seen from the federal level, right? So with that, they go into the preliminary capital plan. Again, this is the breakdown on which areas the money is going to. And there is mention of NYCHA residents here, right? So investing in Section 8 conversions to boost renovations. And this is something I wanted to just make sure that we take a look, because we did mention NYCHA in our district needs statement, and this is an ongoing topic that we are very, paying close attention to. Modern heating and cooling for the homes, Clean Heat for All initiative that you might be familiar with. So those are things that they are going to fund. And then the last bit is Bellevue Hospital. So $48.2 million allowing H&H to serve New Yorkers experiencing acute mental or emotional distress. So this would be to help with renovation, expanding, adding more clinical space and things like that, right? Those are the highlights of this year's preliminary budget. Do we have any questions, thoughts, comments?
This may be a sort of strange comment, and maybe it just the one about the heat pumps as part of the Clean Heat for All initiative.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just surprised that it's going to cost almost $39 million for just 712 homes. I don't know, that just seems like, but anyway, that was just my reaction to it, thinking like, it's going to cost that much money for, I mean, good for the 712 homes, but seems like a lot, but.
Okay. Ella, then Christine.
I guess for me, this has nothing to do with our remit here at this meeting, but it's like we start off with this massive budget deficit conversation, but then you would presume like, okay, then we should keep our expenses flat to last year, but it actually went up. We went from 122 billion to 127 billion. And I'm like, it just makes no sense. Like if we're spending beyond our means, like maybe we should stop spending continuously beyond our means, but that's my point.
Christine, then Roberta.
Yeah, are we going to comment on that section on the general, the general
Like
budget?
the background, the deficit part?
Well, for example, the deficit part, I was going to talk about the lawyers. I mean, I can see that they are hiring a zillion of lawyers to further the plans, and we don't need lawyers to further the plans. What we need is good operation so people don't sue us. And the lawyers we have today are creating more difficulties and obstacle rather than aiding the process.
Yeah.
So I would advocate that we should have less lawyers, many less lawyers, and that should be one. I mean, I think there should be a list, as Ella says, of the places where they're going to reduce the cost, the budget.
Yeah.
And my
I
choice
think
would be lawyers, right?
Yeah. So as a lawyer, not offended, but
Don't be, you are one of the
but I think for purposes of today's discussion, I think typically for our kind of early on year, like response letter, we kind of talk about, but we focus the issues on our prior district needs, right? So if there are ways, Christine, where you might be able to kind of tie some of your concerns to, hey, like actually we had this issue that might be better addressed by reallocating that specific fund, I think that would be a way to address that. Roberta, then
still have the issue of increasing the expenses when we should at least try to get to break even. Which we could put that as an overarching, comment at the beginning.
Okay. Do folks have thoughts about kind of the general framing of the initial section about the budget deficit and how they laid it out? Roberta, is that you're nodding your head?
Yeah, this is a tad editorial, but I think it is helpful. So, I mean, budgets are to some extent in the way that we account for them, it purely numbers. Like there are fiscal realities, but the way that we frame them is somewhat political. And not, I don't mean that in a cynical way. Like everyone has things they want to accomplish. Those things can be very good or bad, depending on what you believe. This administration is particularly interested in seeking additional revenue via taxation, and it has focused its efforts on high income earners as well as corporate taxes. This has been very publicly stated. It's like not novel, but if you are reading this, and not wholly cynically, but I think it should live in the back of your mind that part of the way that we get here or how we get to some of this framing is an effort to support that particular revenue raising goal. That's not to say that it is good or bad, just simply to say, budgets are political documents to some degree, and I think that might be where this is ultimately coming from. That does not change this sort of fiscal problem in which we are potentially facing the sort of, we have federal cuts that we have to deal with. Not as severe as the state, but the city has federal programs that will be cut and potential shortfalls that it may see. And then we don't know what will happen in a macroeconomic sense, but you could imagine that perhaps we might not be able to count on the type of Wall Street bonuses that have really kept afloat the city's programs in eras in this sort of past couple of years in which we've seen sort of weak property tax returns from the city. And so I think that you gotta, like, if we are kind of thinking about how to frame this, like, I think that's sort of the context of their framing. It is a little bit political, but it also contends with realities here. And to the extent that we want to contend with this, I think that we do have to acknowledge that there are limitations and increases in spending that we should highlight or raise what we believe to be the most important core responsibilities of agencies and lift up the asks that ultimately support those things. And that, just some examples, I mean, the street outreach pieces here, just consistently been one of the top, I think, 3 asks over the time I've been on the board. And another, this is not, I don't think, in this overview, but I believe there are some, there's a low budget amount for like street improvements, but the administration, and Christine, I'm sure, could speak endlessly about this, but it seems to be like a low dollar way to unlock a lot of things that we've been asking for a long time. I think lifting up both of those might be useful. And then I think the final piece is, you know, taking that opportunity when we're talking about conversion from Section 9 to Section 8 to lift up the tenant related concerns within NYCHA.
Okay, Dolores.
Somewhat related to Roberta, I mean, this is a political document, and I don't think that we should be sucked into making political commentary. It's also forecasting. So there are many factors into whether or not we have a deficit or a surplus or any of those things. This is just looking at the conditions at the moment. I think if we focus on, regardless of whether or not they are forecasting a deficit, that we still as a community are advocating for the things that we're advocating for, the commentary should probably be limited to, we recognize the concerns of a deficit. However, these are things that are really that continue to be needed in our community, and that we support the possibility of still producing some allocation to these issues and efforts, keeping it local, because I think the other commentary just sucks us into a political comment, which and also locking us into what's stated here in the document, which are forecasts, and meaning that they're not cut in stone. There's so many other factors that may make this actually a worse outcome or even a better outcome.
Leslie?
Actually, Dolores said exactly what I was going to say. I mean, from word for word, you know, I don't think, and nor have we ever, I don't believe, or at least as long as I've been on the board, that we've commented on how to get how to increase the revenue. I don't think, I think that's beyond the scope of this document and our commentary on the document. And also, I mean, not to be too harsh, but yes, it's a deficit. I mean, yes, there's going to be a lot of pain in the city to come soon when they start slashing things, for sure. But I don't want to say it's not our problem, but it is our problem. It's not what our objective with this document, right? Our objective with the document is to, as Dolores said, to highlight our needs and fight for our needs and push for our needs, and, you know, and show them what our needs are, and then let them be the ones that prioritize that in their whole big scheme of things. Because if we handed in saying, well, we understand that we might not get this, or, you know, I don't know if that should be, I'm not saying anyone is saying that's the narrative. I'm just saying, just be careful that, you know, that we, you know, we don't kind of defer a little bit.
Yeah, I think I saw Jessica's hand go up, and then I think it would be a helpful pivot now, based on what you all said, to look at our request from last year and then see how the agencies responded to it. Because that will also kind of help us kind of reiterate some of the things. Oh, I see Dolores's hand's also up. So
I just wanted to
Jessica,
amend
Dolores.
something I said, that's all.
Okay, so how about Dolores quickly, and then Jessica? And then
Yeah, the
also let
amendment is, as I said, it's not political, but that's actually wrong. It is political. This is a tool for our elected officials to be able to also use to fight for the things that we need in our community. So the more specific we are about what we need and why we need them, it gives an actual blueprint to any of our elected officials to continue to talk to the agencies and advocate on our behalf.
Exactly. Yeah.
Jessica, did you want to?
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. Awesome. So in a couple of seconds, let me know when, you will see a beautifully color-coded. Oh, already. Awesome. So to make everyone's life a little bit more colorful and, you know, for the visual folks here, I've basically color-coded the kind of our requests from last the last cycle, and then the agency's responses and explanations. So the legends are as such. Ready? The green, like dark green, they're basically like, this request has already been completed, or we agree and we will support this, right? Pink is they want to have a conversation with us. They need more clarity, or for some of the items, I think Josephine, for like Department of Education, for example, on some of the initiative that you might be familiar with, they're like, reach out to us ASAP, right? So those are some things that require action. And then the yellow are the ones that I would encourage this task force to kind of focus on as the agency not willing to or unable to accommodate our request, okay? So Jesse, I know that in prior years, we kind of went like line by line, but I think in the interest of time, do you think we can just kind of scroll through the ones that the agency said they cannot accommodate? How do folks feel about that approach?
It's really up to you. It's really up to you guys. I mean, I don't necessarily remember going line by line, but I think we're in a very different state because we're not dealing with the same way they organized it. So they're dealing with the agency. So I mean, I think you do, let's be, in my opinion, this is an important document, but it is out of the many documents, out of the major documents that this task force works on, it's really kind of a slightly the minor of the two, right? The statement district needs is the most important. We do get responses to that. We're not going to get a response to this, and so I think we want to be appropriate, spend our time appropriately. I think if we see some glaring,
there are some ones,
I think you highlight those, and if the group agrees that we're going to really kind of trim the fat from, we could say a lot on the preliminary budget, but let us focus on where we're seeing some real gaps in what they're saying that they're not going to fund, or they can't fund, and then what they're saying, the reverse of that in their preliminary budget. Anyway, I think we should highlight those gaps, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Okay.
But yeah, I agree I think you're right. Go ahead and streamline.
Okay. Does that sound good to everybody? I think that's okay. So, and I trust that some of you would have looked at this before the meeting. So here in this big section, all of our requests to the Department of Education, actually they responded with does not support and cannot accommodate, right? So these are funding requests for childcare, pre-K, 3K programs, Wi-Fi, bilingual teachers, mental health professionals, things like that. And they're all, for all of these, they're saying contact the agency directly and promptly for more information.
But isn't it, I'm sorry to jump in, but should we pick 2 or 3? I mean, we can't comment on all of them, but for example, I see the first one of expand funding for pre-K, and that's a signature program of the mayor. Maybe we can make a big deal about that, saying this doesn't make any sense. So I think we should pick in DOT. I'm going to pick 1 or 2 and give you a paragraph or 2 to respond, saying this doesn't make any sense.
But actually, I have a question for Josephine.
I was going to ask Josephine about this too, because she probably has conversations with ACES, right?
Right. Well, Katie, first, what was your question?
So I guess I'm wondering, does this make any sense to you? Because it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, as Christine just pointed out, the very first one that's mentioned.
Right.
We're asking for more seats, and we're, and frankly, and they're saying they are doing this. So I guess it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would they say no to us? Do they sort of mean like, well, we're not going to do it specifically to those because we're doing it everywhere? Like, do you know any background here?
What I believe it is that they're focusing on certain districts, and they're not going to prioritize our district because this is a high earning district overall. But when I say district, I mean schools district 2. I don't mean CB4. So they look at the school district, which runs from the bottom of Manhattan all the way up to 96th Street on the east side, and up to 60th Street on the west side, with a small cutout in the Lower East Side. So it doesn't help us, right? Because in CB4 we have a lot of families who actually do need the 3K seats. So I'm imagining that that's how this works. And
Yeah, just to give illustration to that, Josephine, I'll back. So what happens is when they put these now specifically with the 2K seats, what they do is they'll look at the first thing they do is they look at the zip codes, and they take a zip code and they do the average of the the average earning of the zip code. And we always get knocked out first round because our average zip code, especially in Chelsea, is very high. And I was talking to Ken Jockers about this, about 2K seats. He said, you know, this really stinks. This happens all the time because we are certified. We're ready to go. We can take 2K seats if they would give them to us. Like, we have the facilities, we have everything. He said, but we never get to that point until it's like the third or fourth round, because they look at the total income of that zip code. Not just isolating, you know, obviously the NYCHA campuses, which is right there, which is unfortunate. So, I mean, that's where, you know, I mean, representation comes in to understand that. But yes.
And that they're also not taking into account all the family shelters that we have here. And some families are there for years. I mean, this is not just a temporary situation. So those students are needing a lot of support, right? And not just the shelter aspect of it, but many of them, English is not their first language. So yeah, but I'll stop there.
I see that Maria joined. Welcome, Maria. I just wanted to quickly touch base here. Do folks have until 3:30 blocked out on their calendar for this? Okay, I'm just mindful of time. Ella and Dolores, Christine, do you have comments related to this? Because I would love because there are other items that I would love to get through that actually tie more closely to some of the items that we highlighted in the district needs. So can I just quickly continue to highlight those things, and then everyone keep brainstorming, and Josephine, from ACE's standpoint, right? If you have comments addressing those things that you would like to include in our response letter, like absolutely, you know, keep brainstorming those. Okay, so for the DOE items, they go to both expenses and capitals, right? I was flipping through the different tabs. And then for Parks and Rec, again, all of the funding requests were denied. And part of this, you know, of course, as we highlighted at the district needs, in the district needs, it's extra additional parks enforcement patrol officers, right? Second shift staff, here it is. Okay, so here are the requests for DPR, Parks and Rec. So agency supports but cannot accommodate. So yeah, these are things that, you know, we explicitly mentioned in our district needs statement as one of our top priorities, and they said they cannot accommodate. Department of Transportation, they were mostly addressed, Christine, but except for the busway on 42nd Street and the vertical line separation on 11th Avenue bike lane.
Yeah, a little bit of a concern I have with their approval is that in a lot of places they say they don't have the information where we have given them the letter. That tells me that maybe the next we provide this budget, we need to put the link to the letters, just a suggestion. And then in some cases they said they have already done it, but they have not. So we need to look.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So can you maybe compile those, organize it in that way, and submit your paragraphs? Okay, that'd be great. So we said not. Another thing I wanted to highlight tied to our district needs is Department of Sanitation. So for that one of the requests was denied, which was, you know, basket pickup, you know, GAP truck. And they said they support it, but funding is not available at this time. So I know that we raised quality of life concerns, including trash pickups as part of our district's statement needs. So
we actually got a GAP truck, at least for 4 days out of the week. So we should.
We did. Oh, okay.
Yeah. We could talk about that and just ask for the other 3 days.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we should keep asking.
For sure. And it's not a lot of money.
So maybe if we want to address it, we can acknowledge that they did add it, but we need more or something like that, right, Leslie? We can frame it that way. And now that Maria is here, actually, health and hospitals. So this is something that we raised anew, or actually this was the first time, and I made this comment during the Housing Committee meeting about gender affirming care. So here, let's see. We had requested funding for gender affirming care, and the response was that the agency supports but cannot accommodate. And I just wanted to highlight this. This is not something we mentioned in the district needs statement, but I know it was raised a couple of times, and was just wondering if, if we should say anything about this. I think as part of our initial discussion, we were kind of thinking about, how much do we want to address kind of reality, right? What's happening now and the forthcoming and ongoing attacks, right? From the federal level to our local, but also kind of focusing on the district needs. And my understanding is that there is a need for gender affirming care for our community members. So that's something I wanted to just highlight, that they said they cannot accommodate.
Rachel, if I could jump in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that. At the last housing committee meeting, we had a very thorough discussion, and we're doing a letter in support of gender affirming care, and calling out NYU as the state attorney general for not doing that. And as places such as NYU decrease those services, it just places more need for health and hospitals. So if the city believes that, then they should step up and fund it. And I think we should stress that in our response, especially on that particular issue.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, and then just to wrap up the highlights here, NYCHA. So both requests here under the expense budget, requests were denied. So this is the elevator maintenance staff and dedicated NYCHA unit to coordinate with the Department of Buildings on facade safety program compliance. So they said because of the budget constraints or because it wasn't funded. And I think there were also under the capital, they actually pointed to a link to active NYCHA projects on their website, and their funding sources and progress. And it's not the most, from my perspective, it wasn't clear that it was responsive to our request, but they basically said, yes, see funding information on our active projects here. And then they pointed to the website. So again, I know we mentioned NYCHA in our district needs statement, so something to consider. And then the final thing that I wanted to point out is NYPD. Here. So both requests to hire additional uniform officers and traffic enforcement agents were supported but denied. Okay, and then they said, I think the issue here, the reason is they are trying to hire, but there's kind of a need for additional filling the vacancies. I think that's where the pain point is here. So it says the agency is working on filling the vacancies to get to that head count. Okay. All right, I know we had hands up, so let's go in order. Ella, Dolores, Kevin.
This is just a question on process. Like, I feel like there's such a huge opportunity in terms of like when we find out that, particularly on the requests that say, please reach out to us, we need more information. Like, when do the chairs get that data point back so that we don't have like a week to fill this in, to like make sure that we align with our agencies to say, what information do you need? Because I feel like we're just then, submitting these documents that basically are too vague that get rejected, right? Because there wasn't enough lead time to actually, like really prepare our material. So it's just a clarifying question on process. Because it feels like it's like we've got 10 days.
Tight window, I know. Yeah, they did give us an extension though, but I see Jesse turned on his camera. I think you might have something to say to that.
Yeah, I mean, typically, we've historically haven't really required or requested committees to respond to the preliminary, because really what this is the work has already been done for the statement of district needs for FY27, right? And so, we certainly can provide this. I think what would be helpful is providing this document to committees in preparation for FY28. and saying, okay, well, you're saying this isn't funded, this isn't going to be funded. Because I would say 9 times out of 10, whatever the answer is here is going to be approved by OMB at the executive budget, right? So right now we're at the preliminary budget. June is the executive budget. There isn't a lot of time, like you said, Ella. The system is created, so there isn't a lot of time overall for everybody. And so I think if we get this out to committee members, if they want to start looking at this stuff, so they're maybe trying to have their conversations with agency reps in preparation for when they come back in September, because in September and October is when they have to revise the statement of district needs to be updated for FY28. So that's my suggestion.
My second suggestion is, given that we know that there's a major deficit happening and there's no if there are things that have already been sort of allocated in the budgets, I don't think, do you think it makes sense to include them? For example, I feel like in terms of, there are a few capital expenditure things that already have allocations committed against it. We've got over 70 requests, and it reads like an inventory list versus a compelling narrative of focus. But then again, if this is how all committee boards do it, then this is how we do it. But in any case, my question is, things that have already have funds allocated against it, should we include them in our statement?
Can I answer that?
District needs. Anybody can answer it.
Yeah. Yes, we should. And the main reason, again, is that amendment that I made to my statement. It's political. Sometimes they say that they're doing it. It may not be finished. This provides additional firepower for our elected officials to get the job done. Also, it may be, in some cases, there may be additional asks on top that are related. This also just documents it's something that the community still cares about. So it's not a waste of time to ensure that we are still keeping our foot on the gas for things that are even in the process of about to happen. At least that's how we have operated as a community board. I don't know how the other ones do that. And we have been very effective of just continuing to hammer it home what is important to us until it gets done. And we've seen sometimes it's taken 20 years for something to get done, but they finally get done. And it's because we kept it in our statement of district needs.
Yeah. I think the procedural suggestions are really helpful, but since we have an ongoing conversation about this, and feel free to bring them directly to me, and I'm happy to work with the committee chairs and Jesse to kind of revisit and kind of strengthen our process going forward. I would encourage the next half an hour to be dedicated to kind of comments we can put in based on kind of what the documents now that we have a good grasp of, right? Comments we can put into our letter in response to the preliminary budget and the agency responses. Kevin.
Okay, I have one of them. That's what my hand was
okay.
up for.
Oh, okay. Your original hand. Okay, Kevin.
So for the education points, this is a problem overall because of the AMI of our zip codes. However, we can combat that by getting data on free lunches. That is what many of the financial institutions that provide funding through for their Federal Reserve credit, they will demonstrate that they are providing for not the zip codes, but for schools that have a certain number of students that are getting free lunch. That is a proxy for the poverty line, and that data is available. And so if we want to go ahead and indicate that we do have students within our population that fall below a certain economic level that could benefit from any of these asks, adding the numbers that are receiving free lunches can be helpful to combat the fact that our zip codes are so wealthy at the moment.
Is this data we can easily obtain? Josephine,
I just want to add to that. So lunches became free a couple of years ago, and the data, the families, they still ask you to fill out the form if you require free lunch. But since lunches became free, families are really no longer filling out the form. So my concern is that the data is not going to be correct, but I could still, at least, I could certainly get the numbers of families living in shelters. I don't know what other data we could really get, and we could still look at the lunch numbers, but I don't think that they are going to really recognize all the people who need free lunch.
Oh,
We
go ahead,
can
Katie.
also see, there's a population fact finder that DCP puts together with a lot of different demographic data, and I'm trying to see if there might be something there. I will get back to you.
Thank you, Roberta. If you can just share them with me, and Josephine or Leslie also, like if you have, or Dolores also, if you have any data points that you can look up, please send them our way. Katie, I saw your human hand up, and then we can go to Kevin.
Yeah. So, Josephine, and I guess this goes to Roberta's point too. I have to assume that there are data points other than the free lunch forms, because to your point, I think, the current free lunch forms underrepresent the number of people who need free lunch. So there has to be other data. And I'm just wondering, do you know what data is used right now to determine which schools are Title I, given the fact that not all families are filling out the lunch thing? So I guess that's a question for you. And then I guess I also have heard a lot from the city about sort of procedural justice. And I'm just wondering, sort of as part of our overall thing here, if we can say, somehow tie this issue into the fact that we have a lot of needy families that need attention, but so a new formula has to be developed, or the city has to come up with some new approach instead of just looking at zip codes, because our needy families, because they just happen to live near wealthy zip codes, are never going to get the services they need and they deserve. So I'm just wondering how we might be able to sort of make that point.
I'll definitely check in with our superintendent about those data points. There has to be something there.
Thank you. Kevin?
Sure. There's a couple of areas that I'd be more than glad to try to do a paragraph on if that works. In no particular order, the number one request for the Department of City Planning over the last year or more, including a couple of nights ago's Housing Committee, the request to have a cumulative study on, it's a good problem to have, but on all the different projects going on, that the response there was the agency doesn't understand the request. So I think we could try to clarify it to some degree further in a written paragraph, but also I could work with Joe and Paul in terms of maybe an outreach to speak with the borough president's office. That's one. Two, as I brought up at the last housing committee meeting and made the motion, I'm working on the letter for transgender issues. I'd be happy to write a paragraph about that and the need for health and hospitals funding. Three, I presume Dolores would head it up, but I'd be happy to work with Dolores on the continued need and importance of foot patrol. And then lastly, with the community board budget request, where the response was that it would stay status quo, but there was a request for more funding. One of the things that came up at the last borough board meeting that Leslie was at, I watch it on YouTube or on Zoom, from the borough board president was, and Jesse can correct me if I'm wrong, is it all the community board staff that haven't received increases, or is it just the district managers?
Well, yeah, so I actually don't know the answer to that question. I mean, everybody but the district managers and assistant district managers, and there's a caveat there with assistant district managers, so let's put that on the table, on a shelf for a second, are union. So their increases have been negotiated through the union, and they get them pretty regularly. So, district managers historically have been, as a manager title, the council would just attach the managers to those increases.
Yeah.
But that's fallen off the table as recently.
Yeah. So the borough president at the last borough board meeting was trying to find a solution. So one thing I would put forth is there's this concept called pattern bargaining, where for all over the 100 public sector unions, when the city of New York engages in bargaining, usually with District Council 37, they'll reach an agreement. and that becomes the pattern. To me, the simple solution there is that the district managers get whatever pattern applies towards the 300,000 public employees of the city of New York. So I would put forth that as a logical solution. Do people understand what I said? So in other words, if DC 37 did a 3-year contract, 2% the first year, 2.5% the second year, and 3% the third year, that simply would flow to the district managers, as opposed to a period of years, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, where the DMs don't get a wage increase, and all of a sudden you're way behind market and trying to figure out how to do it, and then you do a one-time increase, and everybody says, "Okay, I feel good," and then 2 years down the road, you're back where you started again.
There's no system in place for us to receive cost of living increase. It's up to the political will, and then just on the backside of that, Adams' administration was the only one that did it without requiring board approval. So if you can imagine, some district managers would then have to chase down their chairs or leaders and get them to approve their cost of living increases that they haven't received for years. And those relationships aren't always working very productive relationships. And so then some chair has the power over district managers' rate, cost of living increase. So it is pretty bizarre and unique.
Well, I would put forth as a solution just taking the pattern and applying it towards the DMs.
Yeah, it's a fine.
But for this letter, though, but for this letter, I think if you're suggesting that this be a part of this letter, I think it's a bit of a discrete matter, and I don't think we've historically raised this. So maybe this is, I as much as I'm with you in spirit, maybe let's explore ways we can support.
Can I make a suggestion? If Leslie's on and Leslie knows the chairs of the other men boards, I do agree with you, Rachel. I think this is it's a great idea, Kevin. And I think it's something that if Leslie wants to bring to her other chairs to say, maybe this is a cross-board, recommendation or something to work with the BP's office on, to say, this is what the city should do, because,
I'm glad to follow up with Leslie on that and drill down on it. Yeah. All right, cool.
But I do notice that you're bringing this up as I'm walking out the door, Kevin, which is,
No, Jesse, I'll remind you, I brought it up last year.
I know you did.
I did, my friend. I did.
I know you did.
Awesome. Any other comments that we can include into the letter?
I just wanted to sort of piggyback off of something Kevin said, and perhaps please let me know if I can be helpful in any way in this regard. But we do have going into effect, or should be going to effect, a state law relating to cumulative impacts for disadvantaged communities. The State Department of Environmental Conservation did a mapping of disadvantaged communities for which there needs to be, and in the environmental review process, a review of cumulative impacts specifically relating to pollution burdens. There's some breadth there. And I think one way to frame this up to the Department of City Planning, which is ultimately the lead agency in these land use matters, is to think about that not only within the context of what we are requesting, but in the context of what their legal obligations are, in theory, about to be, relating to siting within, not the whole district, but it's a substantial part of the district. And then the Department of City Planning has a tool called the Population Fact Finder, and it has a host of social, economic, demographic, and housing data, specifically pulling from the ACS in this district. So if there are places I can help plug that in to the letter and to help support our asks, please let me know, and I will, whether it be in the education space or elsewhere, add that. I can also link you to it, but I don't think we have the chat on, so I cannot link you to it in real time.
You have my email, Roberta. But I think the idea is what I'm doing while everyone's discussing, I'm kind of building an outline here, right, to kind of hit the narrative and the various issue items. If you recall last year's response letter, it was kind of us talking about our general sentiments about the preliminary budget, and then talking about the top priority issues. And last year was housing, I think public safety, and then, there were a couple of items. And then at the end, we had an other issues area where we listed, for example, like the Manhattan cruise ship terminal, right? Kevin, that would be an area to kind of reiterate that. Gender affirming care can certainly be another area that we can list it. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm also, again, in terms of that, like if there are kind of huge topics that you think we should bring to the forefront as a main item, then let me know.
So from a procedural standpoint, you want us to send you paragraphs on the response, the key responses for each committees, or the key responses just for the board?
I really would love to say yes to it, but I'm wondering if that would then mean, Jesse, like procedurally us also reaching out to like all the committee chairs and asking for their feedback, right? So
No. They can show up to the budget task force, and they're going to be at that exec when you discuss this. So I guess I wouldn't necessarily do it by committee, because we haven't really
by subject
historically haven't done
by
it
subject.
by
Okay.
I do it by subject, as we have done it before, and specifically because now we're doing it by agency. So I think it's more appropriate that way. And so yeah, I think that's fine. And, we certainly can send something to the exec members that aren't on the budget task force and say, it will be on the agenda for exec this year, and this month. And so they should be prepared, or I would hope they would send stuff to you in advance. If, again, this is not new stuff. This can't be, new things. This is either looking at the responses from the agencies. So why don't we send that out? And we'll send it out to the exec team and say, take a look at this, take a look at the summary.
That's right. That would be another opportunity.
You want to have anything additional that, you want us to include into the response, then please send it in advance.
Yeah.
And obviously if anything contradicts in a significant way to what we discussed today, then you'll have to raise that at exec and say, listen, this is why we're not going to be able to, we're going this direction and you're saying the opposite. So
yeah. And yeah. So Rachel, I think what you did at the beginning, like highlighting what were our key topics, and then sort of us focusing on that, I think is a great idea. But I guess I just wanted to ask you, like, frankly, and I get Josephine, I'm sorry. I know Jessica, Leslie, a variety of you have written these letters in the past. I mean, are we really going to move the needle here? Or is it us just showing that we've read this and that we just were reiterating on behalf of our community what our priorities are? But, is there really room for us to change the budget allocations or something, or get a different answer, I guess is my question, for those of you who've done it before?
Is the glass half full or empty?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's so much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jesse.
No. Go ahead, Jessica. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if it's so much in the narrative, but certainly in putting these asks forward, like this is, on the Excel documents, like that is, I think Dolores said it and Leslie said it before, maybe Christine, like this is where our considerations, this is what we have to offer as to what we need and how we prioritize those, I think is essential and I think we have seen success, and the narrative should complement that. I don't want to say the narrative's not important, because I think it is. And I think it not only helps our electeds, but also people who come look at the board and say, what does the board care about? We go back to the statement of district needs. So I do think the narrative is important. I don't know that the narrative is what's making is doing the heavy lifting when it comes to making these things realized. But I do think our list of items matters, and the more specific and clear we can be, the more we are equipping not just electeds, but city, people in the city agencies to see how they can make these priorities come to life.
Right. And I guess more specifically, I'm asking this response now. So we've already told them what our priorities are. Now they've said, oh, we're doing this, we're not doing that. So
I think it matters. I think it matters.
It does. At the same time, we don't have an elected official right now. And the big fight happens in the budget hearings where they come back and, you know, each of the elected pushes back and say, oh, I'll talk to you outside the room, right? So this year we are a little bit handicapped.
Mm.
No question about that.
That's such a great point. I thought we were getting somebody from the speaker's office to represent us.
No.
We have speaker staff. There's a speaker's staff
not going to help.
you know, but it's not the same thing as an elected
Right.
city council member that has, you know, their own discretionary budget, that has a vote in the council. You know, it's not the same thing.
So this year is a little bit of, you know, fending for ourselves with each of the agency. Whoever knows somebody with an agency, you use that document to go fight for it, you know.
All right, so Rachel, what do you need from us that will be
Yeah,
helpful?
I was going to then kind of, so far on my list, we have an introductory paragraph where we're recognizing the budget deficit. Last year, we recognized the federal budget uncertainty that was addressed in the preliminary budget, but so I think it's fair to acknowledge the deficit and, you know, also start with the positive, right? This administration did address some of our top priority items, such as the homelessness, support for mental health outreach. And Roberta, like you said, it's been kind of an ongoing area of focus for them. So that's a good thing. And also the fact some of the things you raised about, I think you all talked about various challenges, whether it's federal or political, recognizing that that is what this administration is actively trying to do. You know, they do have programs. I think the lawyer thing, the food programs, those are, I think, fair to say, in direct response and preparation for those challenges, right? So I think it's fair to acknowledge that. But from our community standpoint, there are areas that we need ongoing and further push and focus on, and that's how we lead into the issue items here. So I think public safety, I think we discussed that. We can provide some stats to recognize like there are some changes in the crime stats, but that it has been kind of an ongoing steady and loud request from our community to have more foot patrol, right? Like from our precinct conversations, from our meetings, right? So we can reiterate it from our community standpoint and ask for budget, which was not accommodated, right? And the agency responses. And I think that also ties to the quality of life point that we had raised in our district needs statement, the increase in parks patrol, right? That was not addressed too, so we can reiterate that since it was one of our top priorities. Education, again, all of our requests were denied. So, you know, asking for a focus on our district, and Dolores, you mentioned kind of using the free lunch, the need for free lunches as a way to, you're kind of shaking your head like.
I'm shaking my head because as was noted, it may be, the number may be off, but it could be a place to start if it provides us with enough positive information to counteract it. I clearly recognize what both Josephine and Katie had indicated, that those metrics are probably not as valid as they would have been 3 to 5 years ago.
But thank you for bringing that up, Dolores, because I will check, because there have to be data points, some other kind, but I will find them.
Yeah. Can I, for that one, Josephine, can I rely on you for the paragraph?
Yes.
Kind of reiterating our needs? Thank you. All right, so Josephine on the education point. Housing. I would like for us to kind of hash out how we want to address that. And maybe within it, we can also talk about NYCHA, right? Because we did ask for protection of NYCHA residents, and, you know, NYCHA was a part of the preliminary region, but for the Section 8 conversion, you know, and kind of the heating program. So do we want to say more about it? How do we want to say it?
Well, one of our asks was for tenant protections, correct? So I do think we want to reiterate that. I mean, Maria, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that I frankly at the moment can't remember what our other asks were about housing, but I know that tenant protections was one of them.
That actually, Katie, thanks for bringing it up. Last year, there was funding for the anti-harassment tenant protection program. legal services 7.6 million, and they invested into the PU home support unit, but not that I did not see that specified this year, right? But tenant harassment is something that we continue to see.
It would probably require legal, and it ties in with that the advocacy for more lawyers from this budget, from this mayor. So we can tie that in a bit, saying that if that is an avenue that they're going to provide more legal protections for our community, it's vital that that is directed towards our NYCHA residents.
And I will decrease mine so you can have those.
I want to clarify, the way that I read the legal budget was that they wanted to add lawyers specifically to the law department, and that this was aimed at getting more claims dismissed from agencies.
You're correct. You're correct, Roberta. It was to reduce torts, tort liability.
And that I
right,
don't,
yeah.
not that we should not be having the right to counsel discussion, that this isn't what we wanted, but those two may not be connected in any way.
But we can say it recognizes the need for rule of law, right? The importance of rule of law and, legal protection. So we can kind of tie it that way.
I don't know why we're commenting on the lawyer. Anyway, I don't know if we should be.
That's a joke. It was a joke from before.
I know, but I will say this, Rachel. We do have we did write a letter on how much and how expensive. I'm sorry. You know what? You guys go ahead. We'll talk about procurement later.
Okay. Any other points we want to make about housing? We are CB4, proud of our housing plan. Always an opportunity to link our beautiful housing plan into our letters. So I know that housing wasn't specifically addressed in the preliminary budget. And again, I wanted to also resurface the issue about NYCHA, right?
Sorry to interrupt. I think last year we had some language about, in one of the specific asks was about ensuring the maximum amount of subsidies possible for affordable housing. So maybe we can scan the document and see if we can find that language again and bring that to the forefront, so that programs that provide those subsidies are still being funded.
Yeah, I would reiterate Dolores, but just kind of echoing our top capital asks. These are long-term priorities, even in a point in which there is a downturn. These are long-term investments in this community that we don't want to drop the ball on.
I just also to highlight, because we just voted on this letter at the last full board, right? The thank you letter to DOB, which is not connected to NYCHA, but I would say it is a big thank you, and it's a big win for the district in terms of preservation area with the new flagging system in DOB now. So I think historically we've had a thank you, not a thank you, I'm sorry, a win, sort of like a unofficial wins column sort of kind of thing. I would just want to make sure, because it is directly connected to housing. It's connected to not getting the relieving the pressure of people getting forced out of housing because the owners think they can demo a building. And so this will hopefully mitigate that situation a little bit.
Yeah, we can certainly add a line adding that, because it has been an ask. Okay.
All right.
Any other comments on housing before we move on to other?
Just real quickly, Rachel, I thought you said a second ago that the preliminary budget doesn't mention housing. I actually thought, doesn't it say that it's actually one of their priorities?
I guess what I meant is like they didn't, let's see.
They
So
didn't
like the budget part. I think that's what I was saying.
Yeah, okay. I thought it had, but I was going to say, I thought it had, and that then we should just tie our asks back to what they're already saying is their priority. But if I got it wrong, anyway, I'll go back and look at it too.
But I think there's still value in reiterating kind of what affordable housing means to our district.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Yeah. But I think we could say, you said it was important and we couldn't agree more, as we've been saying for years, and here are our asks that,
Rachel, I'm sorry, I have a 3:30 I have to jump to. I'm happy to make you the host and but we do need to vote. So
oh, right. Okay.
So if we do feel comfortable with what Rachel has rolled out so far, I think we can make that.
And Christine, so I'm clear, which language will you be sending my way?
I'll send you some language about the responses on transportation.
Transportation matter.
So you can put them into other, the other section at the end.
Okay, got it.
It doesn't have to be on the top. And then, so if we are not, can you recap, Rachel, the top 3 things you are going to put there?
Okay, so the order in which can be decided by everybody, but
Right,
basically the narrative, we have housing, public safety, education. Those are the 3 items right now.
Okay. That's good.
Housing, public safety, education.
Motion
and then the
to
others.
proceed, motion to proceed, citing the main areas that we've highlighted.
Right.
All those in favor?
That second? Okay.
All those opposed? Oh, right. Do we have a second? I thought I saw a little hand.
I was a second.
Right, okay. So all those in favor, all those
It
opposed?
was Christine.
Seconded by Christine, motion by Dolores, seconded by Christine. All those opposed? E&E. Thank you, everybody. So what I'll do is I will send around the draft letter. Christine and Josephine, I think you're sending me some language there. Kevin, I think you also said, would you be willing to send the gender affirming bit?
Yeah,
I'm happy to pull from the housing letter, actually. So let me handle that and I'll send it to everyone for review. Sounds great.
Rachel, I thought it was going to work. Was I going to work on the cumulative impact for the DCP, the transgender, and the NYPD foot patrol with Dolores?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead. If you're willing to provide some language on it, I won't say no to it.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, thank you,
Jesse,
everybody.
it's okay for me to vote on this, right? I always get confused if I can vote on this.
Vote on it.
Oh, I think so.
You're fine.
You're muted, Jesse.
I don't hear anything he's saying, but I'll talk to him after.
You're fine.
Okay,
You're
thanks.
fine. Sorry, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh,
Enjoy
okay.
your weekend, everybody. Thank